Hello everyone, this is Benji, local technical support in Denmark. It was recently brought to my attention that some people might have some inconveniences or experience some issues when working with TAC XBuilder, configuring a center server. Also that some features might not be widely known. Therefore I have made a small 101 guide representing my own personal experience and some of the things that I've found to be helpful. This is not an official video or anything, so it's purely built on my own experience. So do feel free to comment or share ideas about other ways of working with XBuilder. I'm going to talk about four things in this video. First, designing a project, what I think that you should consider before building a project, as XBuilder Menta, for instance, and a normal Menta is not the same. There is differences, and also the project structure. Sometimes a little extra work in the beginning can save a lot of work later on. So yeah, share some ideas about what I've found useful. Menta library is a very useful feature that might not be known to many people. And thus, using connection objects. There are a couple of things that I found important when you use connection objects in an XBuilder project. So regarding the design of a project, first of all, when you open up XBuilder, the first thing that you see here to the far left is a folder called the site name, and this indicates that this is where you should put the site name or the name of the customer. But what I found is that also when you click the center server in the middle, you have here website description that also could represent the website name. So we always go ahead and rename this top folder to navigation, and then put the customer's name or the site name here in website description. And why is this? It's when you open the web interface of a center server, actually what is put here to the left is the folder that was called the site name before, that I renamed to navigation now. And this website name here in the top. So we have found it a lot more intuitive for a customer when they log into the web interface, that if it says navigation here to the far left, okay, they know that this is where they have to click to navigate through their pages, and so on. Second, as I said in the beginning, Menta for Center 700 and Menta for Center 400, or normal Menta you might call it, are quite different. Normally in a Center 400 or any regular center, you would make one big program containing everything, and depending on the size of that program, it can be pretty confusing to locate each feature in that program. So actually here in XBuilder you have the opportunity to create various Menta objects. So you now have the opportunity to divide your functionality into different blocks, making it a lot easier to navigate between your different programs, and having separate blocks of code or program. So you can have one program containing a air handling unit and another one containing a zone, for instance. So do consider that before making a project, that you might need to reconsider how you do your programs, dividing the programs up into different parts with different functionality, and not making one large program with everything in it. So a bit about the structure in an XBuilder project. We have found that it can be pretty confusing to just have all programs and logs and time objects and alarms and everything in the same place. It can be pretty confusing to find or locate each object afterwards. So what we do is that for each site or for each building or function, we create a folder. In this case we could call it building 1. And in this building, so now we have a separate folder for this building. Go ahead and create a folder called objects. And in this folder we go ahead and then make a folder called variables. And the objects folder we set to visibility false. This means that when the customer is browsing the web part of the center server, the objects folder will not be visible, but it will be visible from Vista, for instance. So you can still fetch everything down here from Vista. So why do we separate it like this? In objects we create all our objects, for instance a Menta object, or time object, or what else? And in the buildings folder then we create all our pages, for instance our time object page. So the objects folder being not being visible will not represent itself in the web part. Then you will only have all your pages directly in the building. So it's a lot easier to afterwards, when you're trying to locate a specific object in the XBuilder project, to know, okay, I have to go down to my objects folder to find my objects. So focusing here on the Menta object, I don't know if some of you have seen this, but if you reference a input or output from Vista directly to the signal located in the Menta object, you'll not be able to, for instance, force the value, because it's actually just a logical signal. It's not the physical signal. So to get around so when you reference your graphics or whatever from Vista, it can be confusing to have to drill down into different parts of a Menta. So what we do is, and I'll just demonstrate this with a small Menta program here, not so advanced. I'll call it this temperature, like this. Now you can see you have public signal folders containing all the public signals, and an input folder containing all the inputs. So what we do is that we drag everything up here into variables. First of all, it makes it easier to just have to go down into one folder afterwards to get your signal. So we drag the public signals up there, and then also we drag the temperature point up here, or the input up here. And then when we add this I/O module, we don't bind the input directly to the Menta program. What we do is that we then drag this input value over to temperature, replace temperature, and then drag temperature down on the input. So what happens here is that the input in the Menta program is logically referenced to the variable located in the variables folder, and then this signal is referenced to the physical part. This means that when you look at this signal in Vista, it's actually the physical point you're looking at. So you will be able to force or look at the forced state of a point. So might see a bit much to create so many folders and drag signals back and forth, but the benefit of this, where you can actually just fetch everything from Vista in one folder, or to Vista from one folder here. And also, if for instance, if you want to copy this, you copy the complete folder and call it building 2. In this copy you have a copy of your Menta program. That would also be a copy of the time object, for instance, if that was the case. So all this still being referenced logically. So you can see the PVB still logically representing the Menta program in the same folder, and also this temperature input is still referencing the variable in the variables folder here. All we have to do now is just to drag your new signal here, drag it to temperature, and set just to replace, and this temperature signal here that is used in this Menta program here is now referencing the new input. So again, you can drag everything from this folder up to Vista, copy it up to Vista, and then you'll have your fixed physical signal reference here. It also makes it a lot easier if you have this sort of reference point. For instance, if you have a graphic here referencing the physical signal, and you have a program and you have a time object or whatever, if you reference everything to this signal in the variables folder, if you need to change the input for some reason, you can just go ahead, take the new input and drag it onto this signal and say yes, and now this is referencing the new input. And as all the programs and graphics and everything is referencing this point located in this place here, you don't have to do anything else. So we found this a lot very useful, and yes, it might take some time in the beginning to create the folders and drag variables and signals back and forth, but what we have seen is that it's actually a time saver in the end, and make things a lot easier. So give it a go, and see if you find it useful as well. And then speaking about the Menta library feature, this is actually primarily the reason why I was going to make this small demo video. It seems that this feature is not known to a lot of people out there, and is really useful. Right now I've made a complete copy of everything here. So what I'm actually doing is that I'm copying the Menta object as well. If you look here in the middle, there's something called Menta library, and this is actually as it says, a library of Menta objects. So for instance, if I have a lot of zones, for instance, I can just go ahead and create a new Menta library object, and this is just I can just make it a zone control, for instance, or whatever. And this is actually just a normal Menta file. I can just go ahead and edit this, make an RI, for instance, and then RO, like this. I'll call this RI input. I can't do that because there's a space there. RI input. I'll call this RO output, like this, and bind these two together. Not something you do normally, but just to demonstrate it. And I want to save yes. So now you have a small piece of Menta code here. So if I just go ahead and delete my building 2, delete what I have in variables here, and delete my Menta. So instead of having Menta objects here, what you can go ahead and do is to just switch to Menta library and drag this onto objects, and then you have an instance of this program. And again, I'll just go ahead and copy this building like this and call it building 2, like this. And once again, you have the same control here. So first of all, it makes it a lot easier to just edit this one place, because if I want to change something, let's say I have like 100 zone controls. If I want to change something, I don't have to step through all the different zone programs. I can just go ahead into the Menta library and edit this, and I can add, PBB block, for instance, if this is what I want. Call it PBB, make it public, say OK, and save. And what will happen is that in each location where this Menta Menta library object is instantiated, I will get the update. So I just edit my program in one place, but it will ripple down into all the places where I've used this program. So for instance, let's say that all of a sudden I found out I want to put a filter between the input and the output. I just go ahead here and create a filter block, connect it here, set a time constant of 20 or something, and save this. And even though I can't see this now, in each part of this, each and every place that this object is used, this will use the change that I've made in my library. So first of all, it can be a lot easier. It's perfect for zone control, but for other things as well, you can have any, air handling unit, library object, or yeah. Second of all, it has been seen that the usage, the memory usage in the center server reduces significantly. Um, it can reduce itself as much as 60%. So instead of having like 100 applications doing the exact same thing, if you have one application here and you just drag instances of this Menta library object to every place where it's used, it can reduce the usage of the memory usage of the center server dramatically. So you might ask, but what happens then if I have a zone, just one zone or a different zone that needs to work a bit different from the library object? You just go ahead and right click the object here and you disconnect from library. And then when you do that, you can see that it's now a normal Menta object icon. So now this is not referenced to the library, and you can see the difference here, that the library reference on this object is filled out, and the library reference on this object has nothing there. So do check out the Menta library, especially if you have a lot of programs that need to do the same thing. And as I said in the beginning, considering that in XBuilder you can now have different small programs or different programs with limited functionality that you use again and again, the Menta library is really good for doing this, having different library objects with different functionality. So last, I would just briefly like to mention one thing I've noticed using the connection objects in XBuilder. Again, I'll just go ahead and delete my building 2 here. Let's say that we have a Modbus interface here. For instance, Modbus master, and we're going to attach or add a device here. Just open, for instance, a PM700 like this. Okay. So if we want to use a connection object to, I always, and I know you have an extra object each time it's a connection object, but I always use connection objects when transferring data between a Menta program and something else. First of all, I have to say that the physical inputs and outputs I only use for I/O modules. I know that they can be bound to other things, but yeah, I always use the inputs and outputs only for I/O modules. If I want to transfer data to something else, I use the public signals. If I want to fetch data from something else, I use the public signals. And why is this? If I, for instance, take a value here, let me see if I can, it's an integer value, find they're all integer values here. So I'll just go ahead and create, disconnect from library, and just go ahead and create an II and a PVI. Like this. I call this II input. And I call this PVI. Yes. So I could go ahead and just drag this directly onto the input. But what would happen is that if, for instance, put this Menta object into fast control. Fast control is 100 milliseconds. What will happen is that this input will scan the Modbus value, the referenced Modbus value, each 100 milliseconds. I will drag down the Modbus completely. So yeah, as I said, I only use inputs and outputs, physical inputs and outputs in the Menta program to reference its own I/O modules here. So I create connection objects. It can be one connection object, or it can be a multi-connection object, which is really useful as well. I won't dig into that, but give it a go. So I then take the value from my Modbus device here. Yeah, I'll just take this value and drag it to from, and then drag my PVI, for instance, to the 2. So then by doing this, I can now control from the connection object when this Modbus value should be scanned. And I can set it to initially and periodically if changed, and to 10 seconds, for instance. This means that only each 10 seconds this value will be scanned, and if there's any update, it will be sent into my Menta program. If it's the other way around, and I have I'll just drag this, I'll just make a small expression block here, call it PVI out. This is really just to show what I mean, and I'll bind this together with this one and save it, and then go ahead and save the changes here. I can now, for instance, with another connection object, connect this output to a value. It's not writable, just find value here, 2. And then this connection object I can send to initially and periodically if changed, and the period to, for instance, 1 second. Because this connection object can very easily scan the Menta program very quickly. So each 1 second, but it will only send out the command to the Modbus variable when the value in the Menta variable here has changed. So by using connection objects and keeping the scan period in mind, you can actually very easily control the bandwidth usage on your, for instance, Modbus devices, or if you're using iNet connection to iNet. So again, I only use physical or input and output signals to bind to via the variables folder, then bind it to the I/O modules. For everything else, I use public signals, and then I use connection objects, keeping that if it's from a Menta program to something else, I can do a quick scan and then only send if something is changed. And if I'm getting data from some other device, Modbus or whatever, I set the period up, or at least not lower than 10 seconds, because then I will go easy on the bandwidth usage on my, for instance, Modbus here. So this is about it. As I said in the beginning, do feel free to comment or give ideas on how this can be done. This is just my ideas, and I hope it's at least useful for some of you, and might help to get rid of some of the frustrations that people might experience.